62 at the bottom. What he's after, you see, is the positive theory of the affective and intellectual functions, which is this. It consists in the experimental and rational study of the phenomena of interior sense, ideas of reflection, proper to the cerebral ganglions, brain physiology, apart from all immediate external apparatus. He should have had a brain science, you see. So what he's after is very plain, and you notice that by virtue of this extension of scientific method, he's advocating a methodological naturalism of the kind we met in John Dewey, right? Kind we met in John Dewey. I think this is why a professor of mine one time instituted a seminar by saying that, to his mind, positivism and pragmatism are both amount to the same thing and are both dead-end streets. You see, because they confine themselves to the limitations of empirical science. Okay, questions? Comments? I think that's very simple, you probably grasp it right away. Okay? John Stuart Mill. I think it's fair to say that Mill is the most empirical of all the empiricists. You mean more than Locke and Hume? Yes. Hume, you see, talked of two kinds of knowledge. Matters of fact, relations of ideas. Relations of ideas are analytic truths, predicate contained in the subject, like mathematics. Mill maintains that mathematics is an empirical science. 3 + 5 = 8 is an empirical generalization about all sets of 3 and 5. So analytic truths, then, are really empirical generalizations, or if you like, empirical hypotheses. The laws of thought, non-contradiction, identity, A = A and not non-A, empirical generalization about the way in which we think and use language. In other words, what Mill is doing is reducing these first principles to psychological generalizations, that is to say, about how the mind thinks. And this is what Husserl meant by psychologism, which he condemned. Psychologism does not provide an adequate foundation for mathematics, for logic, etc. Psychologism. So this is the sort of thing that Husserl was fighting against, that we anticipated there. But in this move, Mill is rejecting all intuitive knowledge, all innate knowledge, all self-evident truths. In fact, a considerable portion of his writing on epistemology was written in a work criticizing the philosophy of Sir William Hamilton, who was one of the Scottish realists. And you know, Scottish realists in the tradition of Thomas Reid were talking of self-evident truths. Truths which we naturally, spontaneously come to believe by virtue of proclivities of the human mind built into the human constitution which God created. And what Mill is doing in the spirit of the Enlightenment is saying that's not certain enough, that's not positive enough. These truths are simply empirical generalizations, empirical hypotheses, if you like. Now, to say that generalizations and self-evident truths are really hypotheses helps you to see how it is that Mill develops the hypothetico-deductive method. But it also helps you to see how he can be an empiricist and talk of the principles on which deduction work as being empirical. A syllogism, you see, not only has to have premises, but it has to have valid inferences, connections in accordance with the laws of logic. But if the laws of logic are empirical generalizations and the premises are empirical generalizations, like hypotheses, if you like, then you have really a syllogism as a manipulation of empirical knowledge. Simply that. Inductive reasoning, he recognizes, presupposes the uniformity of nature. Principle of induction. The uniformity of nature. Mill pointed that out. Well, according to Mill, the uniformity of nature is simply our broadest empirical hypothesis. You see? It's an empirical generalization extrapolated to everything. All right, that's a hypothesis. And a thoroughly empirical procedure. In his work on logic, and Mill did a great deal of writing on logic, he refined Bacon's inductive methods. You remember his table of presence, table of absence, so forth. He refined those, essentially the same methods really, but a little closer definition, in order to render the kind of precision for positive knowledge that he wanted. Now, that then is how he approaches not only natural science, but the science of human nature. So, as I was saying just now, when he asks about the nature of matter, his response is very simply that matter, that term, has as its meaning, empirical reference, its meaning, simply the permanent possibility of sensation. From an empirical standpoint, the existence of material bodies means that sensations are possible. And by the same token, the existence of mind means the permanent possibility of reflection. Well, you see, he's just building on the John Locke business, simple ideas of sensation, simple ideas of reflection. But discarding Locke's view of the reality of matter as substance, the substratum, and discarding Locke's view of the reality of mind or soul as immaterial substance, the thing that thinks, he's refusing to do metaphysics, refusing to speculate. Notice that this is very close to David Hume, who called mind simply a bundle of perceptions. In fact, I think it's not quite as skeptical as David Hume. You see, when Hume said that all we know of mind is the bundle of perceptions, he was referring to our present perceptions, which include our memories that we think are of the past. anticipations we think are of the future. But for Hume, mind is simply this present bundle of perceptions. Beyond that present experience, we have no knowledge. No knowledge of matters of fact beyond present experience. This bundle of perceptions. Locke, of course, asserted personal continuity, personal identity through memory, knowing the past, which Hume thinks is invalidated. Maybe true, we can't prove it. Mill, however, when he says permanent possibility, he's referring to the empirical generalization about matter, or mind, as being hypotheses. You see, if there is a permanent possibility of sensation, if there is a permanent possibility of reflection, then it's more than simply the present bundle of perceptions. There's personal continuity. At least continuity of consciousness. So he's refusing to do metaphysics. You might play with the relationship between this and Jean-Paul Sartre. No transcendental ego. Each new perception taken for me creates the self anew. You see? It's as if he's saying that the self is simply a permanent possibility of new reflections and new for me experiences. So what we have is roughly this same outcome in English philosophy in the 19th century that Sartre comes to in continental thought in the 20th century. You see, the dissolution of the self. Really, the dissolution of the self. Now, this is why the ethic that Mill develops, his utilitarian ethic, faces a problem that is so often hurled at it. The utility principle, of course, says that we should maximize the pleasure and minimize the pain of the maximum number of people. It's saying you should treat people as a collection of painful and pleasurable experiences. But what else can you do with your Mill if the self is just the permanent possibility of experiences? All you can do ethically is to regard the self that way and try to maximize the good experiences. There is no basis in utilitarianism for respect for persons in the Kant tradition. For the simple reason, he has no conception of the person beyond simply the bundle of experiences. You see? Justice, human rights. These are words we give to certain useful things which produce the positive experiences. So we value justice for its utility, not because it's right. There is no prior right, because there's no concept of persons with intrinsic rights. This is why John Stuart Mill has to develop a utilitarian theory of punishment, where previously punishment had been viewed in the retributivist sense. Incidentally, retributive punishment is not vengeance, revenge. No, that's a psychological process. Retribution is simply holding a person accountable, holding a person responsible, and as it were, trying to maintain the balance within society, something which doesn't belong to them. It's an attempt, in that word, at a social balancing of things. Well, that's a notion which Mill would have no basis for. And so he developed a utilitarian theory of punishment building on Jeremy Bentham's principles of morality and legislation, in which Bentham advocated providing punishment in order to reform the offender, to deter the offender, without holding the offender morally guilty in the classic sense. And so to this day you find really there are two theories of punishment, at least two theories of punishment, in our society. One, the retributivist, the other, the utilitarian. Sometimes combinations of the two. A retributivist theory was articulated by Kant, articulated by Aquinas, but with a teleology involved. There's a purpose in punishment. Yeah, a redemptive purpose, hopefully. But in our society, these are the two, and by and large, our penal institutions seem to operate on a utilitarian theory of punishment. There was, a few years ago, development in Britain which, building on a utilitarian ethic, advocated a therapeutic theory of punishment. That is to say, don't call it punishment at all, call it therapy. The idea being that the criminal is emotionally disturbed, socially maladjusted, so that what is needed is some kind of psychological therapy. And that created quite a stir because it seemed to minimize individual responsibility even more. You may be aware that C.S. Lewis has an article on that in the collection called God in the Dock, an article called The Humanitarian Theory of Punishment, because that was called the humanitarian theory. And his argument is that it just dehumanizes the person. It's not treating an individual as a person who did something, but as a cog in an environmental machine who didn't have any choice. So the philosophical issue of freedom and determinism becomes very acute in that context. Well, Mill addresses the question of freedom and determinism, liberty and necessity. He, being anti-metaphysical, he has to reject necessitarianism. What he calls necessitarianism, sometimes nowadays called hard determinism. That is to say, there are sufficient causes for every human decision and action, such that no other decision or action could have occurred. Necessitarianism. The antecedent causes are both necessary and sufficient. Now, that's a view of causation, which is a phenomenalist he couldn't hold. It would imply that we know what Hume called necessary connections. And he agreed with Hume that we don't. So what we have then is a rejection of necessitarianism. On the other hand, he isn't happy about libertarianism, nowadays usually called indeterminism. The view that human choices, human will, is free and could choose other than it does. He doesn't like that. And he doesn't like it because of the constant conjunctions, Hume's term, the constant conjunctions we observe between motive and action, including active will. That is to say, there are antecedent psychological factors which are necessary to the performance of any action. So there seems to be a constant conjunction between those antecedent factors and the action. We cannot say that they necessitate it. That's a metaphysical theory. We don't know that. So what he has is instead a kind of compatibilism, as it's sometimes called, or soft determinism. He wants to affirm that, yes, we do make decisions, we do make choices. In that sense, yes to will. A choice that's not constrained by external causes. But he denies that those choices are not constrained by, he denies that they're not due to internal causes. Well, and this, of course, this view here, this soft determinism, plainly feeds into his utilitarian ethic and so forth, because if it is the case that we respond to causal factors which on our general hypotheses will lead to pleasure or pain, then those factors to which we respond in making choices will influence accordingly, and the utilitarian approach is therefore the consequence. All right, his utilitarian ethic Stumpf deals with that very adequately. He develops a theory of belief that's rather like the theory about liberty. The beliefs are not so much freely chosen as they are psychologically produced. Now, the roots of that are in Hume as well. Remember Hume's psychology of belief? Constant conjunctions, accustom the mind to expecting certain things, or to thinking there is necessary connection. So he has a similar kind of psychology of belief to that taken Hume. Well, that's the picture in Mill, and you can see, I would hope quite clearly, the hypothetico-deductive method. Extended to the human sciences, yes, in talking about mind, in talking about liberty and necessity, in talking about ethics. You see? Yeah, you need your general hypotheses as premises if you're going to predict the pleasure-pain consequences of a certain action and do your utilitarian decisions. So the extension of it to the human science is pretty plain, and likewise the phenomena. Okay, Mill? I can't quite get it, sir.
Like when you talk about like his view, like disillusioning yourself because you're always having these
Yes, yes.
and then like reactionalized, they will always just be possibilities, or like how do you, like what do you mean exactly by possibilities?
Okay. Don't confuse his use of the word possibility with that of an Aristotelian, where the possible is in the process of becoming an actual. You see? All he means by permanent possibility of sensations is that when we talk about chair, a desk, an ink marker, a human body, what we're saying is we think that such things are visible, tangible. You see? Notice the ending: visible, tangible, audible, touchable. You see? That is to say, if there are such things as material bodies, then as long as there are, there's the possibility of sense experiences. That's all. Now, whether you ever have sense experiences of that particular sort, whether I ever see Esther again, you see, that's a contingent matter. But to say Esther's real, she's alive, bodily existence, is saying no more than she's a visible being. But matter in the sense of the Newtonian spatial occupant, that's something else. That's something we can't affirm. Now, similarly with mind. You see. When I talk about your mind, when you talk about your mind, you are in effect saying that having a mind means that you will have all sorts of states of consciousness that you can reflect on. Now, whether you do or not depends on whether you stay awake long enough. That's a contingent matter. But to have a mind is to reflect. What is it that Descartes said? A thinking thing. Now, what Mill's doing is dropping off the thing and just keeping thinking. It's just that, avoiding the metaphysical hypothesis, sticking to the empirical hypothesis. Yeah, now that may sound a little bit strange, but if you are trying to talk of human beings in purely empirical terms, how else would you do it? Well, the only way you can talk of human beings is in terms of physical sense data and reflective data. You see? The bodily story told in terms of physical sense data, the inner mental story told in terms of reflective data. That's all the empirical input we have about human beings. Is that clear enough? Okay. Let me add just a comment or two about Ernst Mach.